Good morning, I'm Rick Minner, here for a little history lesson on downtown Inman. The centerpiece of our story here, and what was the centerpiece of the town for a long time, is the old railroad depot behind us here. It was known both as the Inman Depot and the Ackert Depot, to eliminate confusion from Inman Yards in Atlanta. The train tracks ran basically right where we're standing right here. There's a cut going through there, goes on down towards Woolsey. And the tracks, basically, in this area, parallel Highway 92 down from Fayetteville all the way down to the county line. The railroad started as Atlanta and Florida, but they only got as far as Fort Valley. It came through Atlanta, Riverdale, Fayetteville, Kenwood, Harps Crossing, Inman, Woolsey, on down across the river, went into Vaughn, Zetella, Williamson, Zebulon, on down to Fort Valley. It had a passenger train and a freight train. And this depot was built in 1906, and the train stayed here till the late 1930s. And we're fortunate to have my dad, one of the few people around that remembers the train and the depot being active and riding the train. We're going to talk to him in a few minutes, but right now we're just sort of taking a look at the depot here. It was one of many buildings right in this area. There's the two Mac Lucas stores right over my shoulder here. There was a cotton warehouse and a cotton gin here, and two stores where the Methodist Church is now. Like I say, this depot was built in 1906. It was used till the late 1930s. My great uncle, William Hart, bought it at that point and used it for storing his chemicals and farm goods in there. When he passed away, I asked about buying it from Uncle Donald Harp, and about the same time Charles Harp asked his dad, John Birch Harp, about buying it. So they couldn't determine which one asked first, so we flipped a coin to buy it, and I lost. And Charles owned it for years, and he sold it to my dad and my brother, and they've maintained it and actually did a nice job restoring it. And we're going to take a little tour of it here in a minute. All right, here's the two Mac Lucas stores I was telling you about. And right down here is the cut where the train actually went down through there. This is the entrance to one of the waiting rooms. Back in 1906 when it was built, it was the era of segregation, so that's a separate waiting room over there for black people that lived here at the time. We don't advertise that too much. This is one of the waiting rooms here. My dad will tell you a story about his dad shooting a hole in the ceiling with a shotgun. And there's the hole right by the light fixture up there. This room back here would have been the mail clerk office here. You can see out to the front was a window to the train. And then this is where the mail was handled out to the, there's a post office at the time too, so the mail went out, the other mail went to here. Back in the day, the back part here was a freight room. Now it's my brother's office here, really nice. It wasn't this fancy when it was new, but it's very nice now. And like I say, my dad's going to tell us some stories from back in the day about the depot, and hope you all enjoy hearing about it. All right, I'm Rick Minner, here with my dad, Jim Minner. We're going to talk about the Ackert Inman Depot. I think that depot was built about 1906, and then the tracks were taken up about 1937. Is that right?
That's right.
So where did
38.
38. Where did the Ackert name come from?
We don't know. Now, say it started out. Inman is the name of the Ackert, and it's named for a man named Inman who was a friend of one of the Mac Lucases, who was the depot agent at the time. But Mr. Inman was a member of a very wealthy Atlanta family. It's still around, and his last name was Inman. And so that's the Inman came from him.
So where I guess Ackert was to have not have confusion with Inman Yards.
So there's that already named for the Inman family. It was a famous railroad family. It's still there, Inman Yards in Atlanta, which is a freight headquarters, and where shipping was exchanged and so forth. Inman Yards was a very busy commercial part of the railroad. And it got confused with Inman, Georgia. And so what they decided to do is to keep Inman. It was for Mr. Inman, who was one of the railroad people that built the railroad. It would keep Inman. It would be the mailing address, in which that it became that. Ackert would be the shipping address. So people started using Ackert. And you know your grandmother had a little thing she would like to sing. Inman, Ackert, call it what you please. We'll bring Fayetteville to their knees. That was when Inman also had a school. But so, anyway, I don't know why they didn't find out at that time where Ackert really came from.
I know it started out as a Atlanta and Florida railroad and had intentions of taking the tracks all the way to Florida, but it only got to Fort Valley. I guess it later became part of the Southern Railway system.
Yep.
What do you remember about when the train came through? I guess they had mail and freight and passengers all traveling.
Oh yes, we had an up train and a down train, and beside the gin house on that side out there was a seed house, which when a bale of cotton was ginned, the seed would be pumped by air through a pipeline up in above us to out there to the railroad seed house, and the railroad cars would just pick up the seed from that house. And also on the west side of the depot was a side track, and the side track follows a little gully which is still there, a little terrace which is still there, and the railroad would drop off a truckload of fertilizer in the seed in the summer, and the farmers would come in their wagons to the sidetrack to the railroad car and unload their fertilizer and take it to the store, to the field, or wherever. And then when and there's also a warehouse right in front of the present depot across the road. The foundation is still there, which you know about, right? But a lot of people in the Harps always didn't sell their cotton on the day that it was gin. They would keep it in that warehouse, and then sell it when the price got a little better. But the sidetrack was used both to deliver cotton, to deliver fertilizer, and then pick up cotton after it was ginned.
And I guess it was a big thing to meet the train for a young fellow in your time.
Well, that was the big train for all of Inman. We had an up train and a down train, and everybody went there. And of course, at that time, we had a tennis court, and like your Aunt Ida Mae and all the younger people in the community would go down to meet the train, and they would go early and play tennis and gossip, I guess, and then when the down train got to Harps Crossing, it would blow its whistle, and then we would all get ready for the train to come through, and we were a flag stop, and if it had a passenger, we'd put the flag out and it would stop, and if it was dark, when it was dark in the wintertime, we would hang a lantern. But if it no passengers and no reason to stop, we'd have to hang the mail. And I'm not sure where we'll ever find a picture of that thing that hung the mail. It was just an arm that we put out over there and hung the sack on it. And the railroad and the railroad mail person would be standing in the open door of the mail car, and that would reach out, and as the train came flying down the track, not slowing up Inman, it would snatch that mail sack and take it in. And my job used to be to hook that mail sack up and that was a very important job to have. But I've forgotten exactly how it hooked up. But and then they would just our mail would be thrown out on the side of the track, and I would pick it up and carry it in to Maggie Tarpey, who was the post mistress at that time.
Now tell about Papa Hart getting ice and ice cream delivered by train.
Well, it was past my time. I never got any, but in those, I was told about it. But it was Papa Hart would send to Atlanta. I don't know how, but he would buy what they call a bucket of ice cream, and it would be on hot ice, and it would still be frozen. And so we would have, they would have. I was around, but don't remember it. Ice cream like they had in the drugstore in Fayetteville, where they dipped it out of a bucket.
Talk about seeing the soldiers on the train and then the tramps or hobos that would come in on the train.
Seeing the soldiers in what?
Coming through on the train at night.
Well, World War II was heating up, and it was back in the fall of 1940. I mean, we knew we were headed for war, and of course President Roosevelt, thank goodness, was getting us sort of ready for it. And the draft, and they had a call for volunteers, and it was for 1 year, and they were supposed to get out in October. And October came, and we were getting very close to war, and they didn't. Enlistment was not ended, and they had a saying, "Ohio," out of the Army in October, and it was written everywhere you'd see it. But anyway, we would see at night. I don't remember seeing it in the daytime, but the lights would be on inside the cars, and soldiers in uniform would be sitting in there.
How about the people like the hobos and all that would show up at Granny Hart's door? Do they come by train, or they just happen there?
By train, they'd jump off. See, there were the Depression. Well, you can't imagine how bad it was, even by reading about it, and I didn't know at the time. But you have they were not lazy people, dangerous people. They were people who couldn't find a job anywhere, so they would slip on these trains and ride free, of course, and they would go from town to town trying to find a job, and they would, I guess the word must have gotten out about Granny Hart, because they would jump off right in front of her house, and she would give them something to eat, and Papa Hart would let them sleep in his barn on the hay, and then the next morning they would start walking down the railroad track, and of course they walked up. Finally, they found somewhere it would stop, and they would get back on. But they were just people who had absolutely no money, so you can understand it. But pretend that you had to go for a month and really have no money. I mean, it's got down to where that you're going to try to steal a biscuit somewhere, or stop by and get a bite to eat. But they weren't bad people, lazy people. But you didn't want to invite them in your house.
How about the hole in the ceiling in the waiting room that's still there?
Well, that happened when my daddy was 12 years old. He had been rabbit hunting, and as I said earlier, that meeting the train was a big social thing in Inman. Just about everybody, if they had not much to do, they were there to see who was on the train, or just visit with each other. And there's still a bench situation in the passenger room, and the stove is right in front, and there's a bench on the other side, on the western side of the room. And people would sit on that bench waiting for the train or whatever and visit. And Daddy was sitting there on the bench. He was 12 years old. And he had his shotgun sitting down between his legs. And it went off and it made a hole in the building. But it impressed your grandfather so much that he never owned another gun. Had a pistol, but he never owned another gun.
What about Uncle Harry wrecking his car at the depot?
Well, Uncle Harry had a famous car. I don't know where he got it because I never saw it. But it had I heard, the rumor was that he won it in a poker game. Uncle Harry was a well-known poker player. And anyway, it was a limousine. It had a driver in front. I don't know what model it was, what kind of, because I don't remember. Well, I never saw it to know about it. But it had a partition between the driver and the seats in the back, because the seats in the back was where the owners, their guests were. And there was a speaker thing you spoke to if you wanted to tell your driver to stop at the next ice cream place or something. You would call him through this little horn thing that went to the front seat. But Steve McLucas was also a character around town. But anyway, I was not around, but I was told, and I believe it, that Uncle Harry would had Steve a driver's uniform with a little shirt and cap and everything. And Uncle Harry would get a date with somebody in Atlanta, and he would get Steve to drive him up there and tell the people, the Atlanta folks, that Steve was Uncle Harry's employee that drove him around and so forth. And it was Uncle Harry enjoyed that, and people enjoyed talking about it.
Did he run the car into the depot?
Yeah, he was coming through, and he looked up, and the train was coming. So he had a choice, either to run into the depot, let the train run into him. So he decided to take the depot and missed the front part, but ran up the platform and tore it off.
Now, how about when the decision was being made to take the tracks up and do away with the train? Talk about the people from Inman going to Atlanta to try to plead their case.
Well, it was coming up, the hard times were hard, and the business had dropped off, and the railroad was talking about getting rid of the railroad. Of course, you can't just walk off and leave a railroad to get rid of it. You have to, some sort of commissions in it now that you have to go get permission to take it up, get rid of it. And so Daddy said they got a delegation from Fayette County to go up and meet with the judge or commissioner, whoever was in charge of the hearing, to plead for them to keep the railroad. And they all went up there, Daddy among them, and they all were called on to speak. And each one of them told that we would have to keep the railroad. One, we needed a way to go to the doctors in Atlanta. And two, the main thing, if we did, we would have no way to carry on any commercial relations with Atlanta. We just had business in Atlanta and medical stuff. It affected our economy and our way of life, and even our lives. We just could not do about the railroad. And so Daddy said that they all got through with that tale, and the commissioner asked each one to stand up and say, well, Mr. Bennett, how did you get to Atlanta from Fayette County today? Well, I rode with someone, Mr. Harp, in his car. Well, so you and Mr. Harp came in a car, right? Yes, sir. Well, Mr. McLucas, how did you come Well, I drove. Now, did anybody ride with you? Well, yes, Mr. So and so and Mr. So and so. Well, how did all get here? Well, Daddy said it turned out we all drove and we all rode in a car. And he said when I came home, I knew the railroad was gone.
What do you think the difference would have been if the railroad had stayed there for
I'm
Inman?
glad you're coming to that because Daddy always said two things. He said President Franklin Roosevelt in the New Deal had come along 2 years earlier. Inman and Fayette County would have kept the railroad. I would have kept the farm. And our lives in Inman and Fayette County and in our family would have been very, very different because Rick, the railroad was even more important, bigger than I imagined until I got to reading a little for this, what we're doing now. And it just, we had railroad families who lived in Fayetteville. We had the Arnold House, you know where that is in Fayetteville. Well, Mr. Arnold was head of the railroad operation down here. But it was a big thing. It was the heart of the economy. And it was just a terrible blow when the railroad was lost.
Good morning. Got a little extra content to add to our video about the depot, thanks to John Lynch and others. He's been gracious enough to share with us some photos of memorabilia he's come up with over the years, and also some photos and maps and such. And the things that interest me, one, I need to go back and make one thing clear from early on. The original railway charter here was for a train from Atlanta to Hawkinsville, and that never materialized. That was like in 1887 or so. And then a year or so later is when the Atlanta and Florida came into being, and they didn't even get as far as Hawkinsville. They got to Fort Valley when their plans kind of stopped there. But they operated until 1895, and since after that, till they closed it in like 1938, it was Southern Railway. And among the things John shared with us was part of a key he found, dug it up somewhere around Fayette County, that has the A&F, Atlanta and Florida Railroad, stamped on the key. And of all the years of looking for information about the train and the depot here in Inman, I've never seen anything with Atlanta and Florida on it, and that's a real rare piece he's got there. And he also shared with us a picture of the work crew that used to go up and down the tracks on one of the hand carts, where you got 4 railroad wheels and like a seesaw pumping thing. And the best I remember from hearing stories when I was a kid, Willie Hand, that lived between Inman and Woolsey, was that's one of the jobs he had when he was younger, was working on the railroad crew. But it was good to see that picture. And he's also shared some other pictures of the locomotive and all that came through here. And another thing that he told me about that I never really thought, well, we've actually found out from some research that people in Woolsey had done, that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually came through Inman and Fayette County on a train going to Warm Springs. And if you look at the map that we've got, it makes sense because it could go to Williamson, and there was a line there that went basically directly to Warm Springs. So at one period of time, the most direct route from Atlanta to Warm Springs would have been through Inman and down to Williamson and turn to the right and go to Warm Springs. So that was all interesting to find out, and I verified that with my dad. He said he never actually saw the presidential train come through, but he heard people talk about it. It was accepted fact when he was growing up. So thanks again to John for all his help on this video. We hope y'all got as much enjoyment out of watching this video as we did out of making it. We're trying really hard to produce some videos that are worthwhile and help y'all learn about what we're doing here at Inman Farm Heritage Days. If you like it, if you don't mind, help us out, click that like button and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you on the next time.